So in this webinar, we're going to cover 4 topics. Number one, we're going to identify the business challenges that we've had in the environment here lately for 2020. We're going to look where businesses are today, model what we could happen next, and review the impact of the business flux on the commission plans and systems. And then next, we're going to identify really how and where you can make changes and accommodate what's happened to prepare for what will possibly come next. So let's look at the changes in the business environment and the effects on sales and compensation as bonus as a result of the events of 2020. If you think about what happened in 2020, really, you had a lot of rolling lockdowns based on the coronavirus. You've got vaccine hopes, especially recently. You've had a lot of vaccine hopes. You've got restricted travel from a global perspective. Here in the States, you've got election and political turnover that you have to prepare for. Government stimulus from some countries, non-government stimulus from other countries, and really a whole new swath of buying patterns that people are coming about. And so really, if you think about this translates to commission systems in a manner that it has a trickle-down effect. Well, it affects your revenue, it affects your sales, it affects your salespeople, it affects you, your commission planning, and your commission systems, because it's going to hit you both on the revenue cycle, the expense cycle, and the planning cycle. So you really have to be prepared. And I know I only hit a few of these topics, but realistically, the big topic is going to be, are we going to get a vaccine? Is it going to be effective? And how long is it going to be rolled out due to the pandemic, sorry. So if you look at this map right here, what we're illustrating is the global GDP. So this is just a reflection of how things went. Obviously, red is not good. Green is okay. And so our entire globe really got hit from a global GDP perspective. Everybody decreased with the exception of course, China. Everybody really took it hard from a production capacity, from GDP overall. And that was caused by the rolling lockdowns and people just hunkering down, not traveling, not purchasing, really put a damper on a lot of the economies. So if we think about that and think about how it hampered everybody, let's look at really what the effect of that was and what happened today and what could happen next. So, where are we today? We're all really still trying to pivot to a new normal. And I really don't like the idea of calling it a new normal. There are new buying patterns that are being enhanced and new selling patterns that people were slowly getting to. And I recall years and years ago, sitting down with people and they were saying, well, the internet, you're never going to go buy a car anymore from a brick and mortar. You're just going to go online and buy it. And this was back in 1999. It just never got there for a lot of things, and it still really isn't. And people are looking to push more and more towards internet purchasing. It is starting to happen at an accelerated pace now, obviously. The question is, once we get through these rolling lockdowns, once we get through some of these problems we have, will some of the old buying patterns come back, or are we really moving holistically to the internet as a purchasing method solely? And if you think about that, what does that really mean? Well, we have to look at how we retrain and retain good salespeople. And in this case, we're going to be looking at giving them quota relief, and you likely have given them quota relief. And frankly, a lot of you probably have reduced many of those people in your sales organization, and you right-size your demand for as demand for your goods and services really trickled off or got right-sized. In a lot of places, that may have actually increased the demand, where you were looking at, oh, geez, do I need to reduce their quota? Do I need to reduce their payments? Because frankly, everybody's moved to something that we were really well suited to, aka Amazon. Actually, let me go back to here. I love this saying here. A well-designed sales and job compensation program can provide dramatic improvement to a company's sales results. So this is out of David Ciccelli's book. And he's really well known for building sales compensation plans. I have taken the liberty of reading through David's book about 2 or 3 times here recently, just to get little tidbits on what he thought about market fluctuations in the industry. And it's interesting because I'll go over it here shortly. He calls out patterns of resetting or reestablishing quota due to market fluctuations. And I think that's really critical, and we'll hit that here in a little bit. But if you get a chance to read his book, it's a really good book. So one of the things we need to think about from pivoting or the new norm is really what is selling. Logistics companies and transportation goods are selling. Online purchasing is selling. Marketing is moving towards a digital world or a digital Zoom world, and selling has become really digital Zoom world selling. So how do we pivot, and how do we utilize our commission systems to pivot? And so we always have to be thinking about, well, what are our salespeople doing right now? Our salespeople right now, and I'll speak from our organization perspective too, our salespeople right now are doing a lot more digital social media marketing. No, they're not necessarily going out on Twitter if you're B2B, but you are going out on LinkedIn and establishing relevant contacts. and you see your marketing organization saying, hey, I need to plug in so that my salespeople can start having those things that are really going to help them move the revenue forward that we need to start moving. For a lot of people, the reality was that come March, no one was buying anything, right? Unless you were Amazon or you made toilet paper, you were just simply at a standstill. You weren't getting anywhere. Slowly, we've been seeing people go through their online purchases, making their way back out, especially here in the States and some states, making their way back out to doing some normal purchasing and buying patterns. But realistically, I think that we have transitioned, and you will see a continued transition to marketing and selling being more converged together, where salespeople are going to be reliant on marketing and web techniques to deliver those deliver the opportunities that they're looking for. So how does that really mix in from a commission system or commission plan perspective? If you look at it, and let me actually just get to this interesting tidbit here, right? So what you see is the pandemic has raised the marketing budget, right? So just to tie into what I said, this pandemic specifically has increased the need for marketing expenditure as a percent of the firm's revenue. What does that mean? That means that marketing even more so is tied into your sales performance, right? So if you're thinking about it that way, how do I start leveraging marketing and marketing-based metrics, and how do I start watching and tracking those things through my commission system as they come in, they deliver leads, and they get to close business? That's really what you need to start looking at, is how you start tying marketing metrics to those closed business pieces, putting it in and looking at it as part of your commission plan and your commission systems. That's really moving more from a closed business metric, meaning, okay, I got revenue in, I multiply it by a number, and I give somebody a paycheck, to, yes, I still need to monitor revenue, but because things have changed, I really need to start monitoring more upstream and associating commissionable tasks and commissionable items to behavior that is going to allow me to capture deals in a new world using new mechanisms. So I'll give you one of the examples that we do here at Landshore. Is we move from a full quota-based, card carrying, here's your revenue times rate, towards a more demand-centric generation, where we have metrics around demand generation utilizing social platforms, right? So it's how many leads have you put into your funnel, and those leads now are tied to marketing and social demand generation. So those are important aspects, especially if you're going B2B. On a B2C perspective, this is something that a lot of you have been doing already. I've got to have a web storefront. I need to drive demand through my web storefront. From B2B perspective, A lot of us were really slow to move towards that specific type of demand generation, and it needs to be monitored and commissioned on. So, like I was saying, where are we? What should we do? Here are some suggestions, right? Let's assume your organization has been right-sized, right? So you've at this point in time, you're either filing bankruptcy, or you've restructured, or right-sized your organization, right? Nobody is out there still waffling. If you are, you're 9 months later. You're likely one of those who's near bankruptcy, frankly. Most of us have pivoted and made a decision. I'm going to cut here. I'm going to ramp up in this place, and I'm going to remodel my sales organization based on what I see, right? So if you think about this, when you start planning, how do you start planning for the future, right? How do you start making those plans such that we will be getting the revenue, the quota that we want to attain, and start meeting those metrics here in the future? And I keep talking about quota. You'll see that coming up here in a little bit. What you're going to want to do is review historical patterns of your organization pre-pandemic, and you're probably going to want to go farther back. And I'll show you some examples here. You're going to want to go further back than just 2019, because 2019 isn't realistic. You're probably going back to somewhere such as 2016, 2017 to hit even close to pre-pandemic levels. If you look at that and you think about how your business was in that particular year, in that particular situation, leverage the knowledge that you have over the last 3 years, but utilize those metrics to understand what your next year will probably look like. Because I'm telling you right now, we're not going to go from pre-pandemic levels to those levels again, right? We had, as you can see here, a 17% loss in sales during the pandemic. The expected growth for next year is 4.2%. Realistically, if you wanted to hit if you want to recover from that 17.8%, your growth expectation would have to be double that. It'd have to be near 34 to 36%. That's how much sales growth we would have to hit next year to get to pre-pandemic levels. What does that mean? Well, if we're growing 4% over a year annum, which is really great growth, you've got about 6 to 8 years before you're hitting pre-pandemic level growth in sales of revenue starting now, right? So think about that, right? You've got anywhere from 4 to 8 years before you're going to hit, a normal company is going to hit their pandemic level selling. So that should allow you to look at things that you're going to forecast, how you're going to behave in the market, what you're going to be forecasting off of, how you're going to do your planning. It's a whole new animal at this point in time. So let's review the impact of this business flux on existing systems and plans, right? And I've been touching on it just a little bit here. Some of this pre-pandemic and current pandemic on the systems, right? Realistically, what has happened to most people based on the downturn, specifically in the sales organization, the commissions organization, is you're likely offboarding a lot of people, right? And then you're trying to figure out, how am I going to onboard these same people or different types of people so that we can hit the metrics we want to hit for next year. Many of us probably cut to the bone and cut too many. I can think about 2 organizations that are partner organizations of ours that had cut deeper. Some of them did it earlier. Like, I'll give you an example. UiPath, they let go of a lot of their sales organization and went to a digital model and a partner selling model, right? So they changed their model. That particular group, UiPath, they started their changes, I want to say about 8 months ago, right as the pandemic broke. Perfect timing. I'll give you another example of one of their competitors, Automation Anywhere. They waited, And now they're in a situation where they're having to do not just a model change to their sales system, but an organizational change. So they just recently let go a lot of salespeople. What they're doing now is they're moving all of their production, all their delivery back to India. They're effectively letting go of all of what they think is their high-priced salespeople and high-priced delivery here in the States to go to an India outsource model. We'll have to see how that works for them, but effectively they've come to the conclusion, in my estimate, that they are going to work and focus on profit margin as applies to their current customer base. What you see with a company like UiPath, who's a software company, is they're starting to go after that base of customers that people have who have made those types of decisions like Automation Anywhere to cut and cut significantly. So if you think about how that applies to you and your commission system, that really means that you cut down and you cut back a lot. At some point in time, you're either going to keep cutting or you're going to start growing. So really, the big impacts on your commission system is going to be something to the effect of you're going to be onboarding and offboarding a whole lot. And so what do I say here? I say burn what you did, right? From a commission planning, a commission system, a quoting setting, burn it down. It's irrelevant what you did this year. We all had great aspirations for 2020. It was going to be, the year of the explosive growth. Burn it. Burn it next year. Burn it the year after. You need to go ahead and look at what's coming. You are going to see, I think, some pent-up demand in a Q1 or end of Q4. I don't necessarily think it's going to be indicative of what you should expect. So when you do your quota planning, you should really keep those types of things in mind. So if you look at it here, and I say at the bottom, will it go back to normal? No, it's not going back to normal. Anybody who thinks projects off of 2019 actuals is going to be sorely disappointed. You've got to think about it. And one of the things we did here from a sales organization, and I keep going back to what your sales organization is doing, right? Your sales operation, your sales organizations. It's because this is going to impact your commission plans. Sit down with them and talk to them. Our sales organization come April, May said every deal that we've got in our pipeline that isn't paper or close to being contracted, burn it. It's a resell. What does that mean for people in your organization? It means they're having to do the same thing. That is going to impact you here, and let me just go ahead and move on. So that's going to impact you from things like projecting and setting your revenue forecast, draws, and really resetting quota. But again, how are we going to project and set revenue forecast here? So what you want to do is you're going to want to apply quota expectations further back, right? You just don't want to set it to 2019. You're going to go further back, right? You want to probably go back to a year that more closely models your existing year. In my case, I looked at it and I said, okay, well, maybe I need to go back all the way to 2016. In some of the cases, some organizations, that's probably around where you're going to be 2016, 2017. Look at that and see if it's a relevant data set for you to model based off of, to see based on the growth expectations of the 4% that we talked about from a sales growth, what does that really model out to be? How does that impact the forecast? How does it impact quota? How many salespeople you need to have on board? Applying logic, organizational logic and seasonality makes sense, right? Especially because I think what we're going to see is a pretty big, once that vaccine comes out and everybody's gotten vaxxed, there's going to be some pent-up demand for travel. There's going to be pent-up demand for a lot of things. I think you're going to see a big spike. I think you're going to see it come off. And then the other thing too, and we talked about it a little bit here just recently, think about how you're going to measure your new business model. So if you're moving towards, if your sales operations and your sales organization are becoming more intertwined with your marketing people, think about how you're going to measure that And think about the importance of probably bonusing out your marketing people for what they're doing in their behavior, right? So you're going to look at and say, okay, I sell software, I sell wind turbines, I sell, whatever that might be. I'm going to have more over the next year applications of internet usage so that I can drive sales and revenue or more virtual conversations, then I need to look at how I set up my metrics based off of those touch points and not traditional touch points. One of the other things you would be looking at in an operational perspective is the reduction of travel expenses. Think about how you might be able to leverage that further, right? And again, here's just the time expectancy of the sales comeback, right? So you can see just exactly what I was talking about right there. This is a group at eMarketer who's projecting those sales comes back. That sale comeback is not going to hit for another 4 or more years, right? So they're a little bit more bullish on their projection to say it's going to hit in 2023. My thoughts are that it's going to actually take longer based on a lot of the reading that I've done. But I wanted to put this out there so you could have a graphical representation of what you're looking at internally in your sales organization. Holistically, people are looking at global sales and how you can apply this to your metrics and your calculations. So let's look at how we can identify where we can, make changes to accommodate what happened and prepare for next year. All right. So I'm going to really hit quota hard, and there's a reason for that. And I have it further down on my slides here. If you're a company that takes rate times revenue, and that is what pays out your commission plan, likely is that you're able to maneuver more adequately without a quota, because truly the only thing you should be looking at is demand of the store in this case, right? Most people who are rate times revenue are going to be storefront type people. You're looking at the demand of the store. Well, I don't have no traffic coming to that store. Do I need 3 salespeople? No, I'm just going to cut down to 1 salesperson. Rate can be the same. That person can now handle the traffic. There's really no modification of, let's say, the sales plan. The plan likely works well for you. If it worked well before, it'll probably work well now, unless you're moving towards people who are online storefront demand generation. And even in that case, you're looking at the same thing, rate times revenue. Well, do I need 3 people to handle half the reduced requests that I have? Well, no, you don't. This isn't a planned problem. Really, this is a number of people problem that you have, right? So you need to look at it and say, okay, well, who do I want to keep around? Who's performing well? I'm going to go ahead and cut down headcount based off of that. And that's really a person sales operations problem and an offboarding, onboarding issue. So that's not a quota issue, and that's not a plan issue. But let's talk about those people who are, in that B2B, or people who might be selling, let's say, med devices that are end user is going to be a person or a doctor, or you have all kinds of things. Like I said, wind turbines. You have people who are selling software. Those are all modeled off people who are typically going to have a quota that they need to hit, and they'll have draws, they'll have clawbacks, and all that good fun stuff. But they have a quota that they need to hit. If you think about traditional distribution of quotas, we'll just cover this, right? There's a 2/3 model of quota, the thresholds and impact of terminations, right? So if you think about this particular model, because a lot of us will say, okay, well, in a quota setting model, we should really have 50% who make quota, 50% who shouldn't, right? Logically, that makes sense. No, not in today's market. I would guarantee that probably 95% of people did not make quota based on this market. So what you really need to think about is, how do I apply a 2/3 model due to thresholds, let's say, or impact of terminations, or impact of market fluctuations. You're going to want to start looking at maybe a more accurate 2/3 model, because as you scale up, and what 2/3 model means is 2/3 of your organizational hit quota. but a quota will be changed, right? So as you scale up, you're going to be looking at, I cut down to one salesperson, I cut down to 10 salesperson people or 1,000 salespeople, right? And I cut down, half of my sales organization or more. I am now going to have to scale up from that half because the half can handle current demand and plus two. I'm going to have to scale up from that plus two, probably to scaling up my organization, maybe 30%. Doing that means that those people aren't going to be able to hit their quota unless they have a reduced quota expectations, right? Based on a 2/3 model. So that's what I'm getting at is you're going to want to look at how do you model off a 2/3. And as you can see right here, I said something to the effect the distribution is going to allow for more morale to be boosted because what everybody just went through is I didn't hit quota. Am I going to keep my job? I did good last year. I'm a good salesperson. I want to keep good people. So you need to look at their quota modeling too and say, okay, how do I distribute it so that the downturn and lack of performance is accommodated for? You have different types of quota allocations when you're looking through these things, right? There's the four most widely known ones. There's top down. Top down negotiated means that it's going to come from management. They're going to negotiate based on certain segments or certain areas. I'm in the Northwest and I sell financial instruments, therefore I'm going to have a higher quota based on someone who's in Punxsutawney. And that type of thing, right? So that's top-down negotiated. The other type you have is top-down, bottom-up. I don't think this is going to be relevant based on what has happened this year in the market. I don't think top-down, bottom-up is going to be work, right? Because you're not going to have the knowledge from bottom-up on man, a lot of these people are just wondering what's going to happen to their life. They're not going to be able to set their own quota. And then you have account planning for territories with large accounts. Like I have Microsoft, and that's my account. So you'll have account planning based quotas. I think you're going to see a mixture of 2 and 4 here in the market right now. You're going to do top-down negotiated. What that means is, hey, I think we're really going to do this. But I need to negotiate it out and really think about it. So you're going to be going to your sales managers in those regions or who are responsible for those stores or those places. And then you're also going to be sitting down and doing account planning with your larger customer, your large customer account representatives. And those are the types of things you should expect from a quota allocation and understanding. I gave you a little idea here, quota in practice, right? So here you can see a distribution of quota based on base salaries and OTEs, along with the formula. I wanted to put this out there for you because this is something that you should be doing, especially like say you have a base salary. And this is going to be something you have to roll out to your key sales people is you want to let them know, hey, here's your sales, here's your base salary, here's what your target was. This is what your quota not adjusted for market fluctuations and the disaster that just happened is, right? So you were sitting at a 5% rate at quota to hit your target incentive, right? So now you've got a question to ask yourself as a commission manager that you need to provide this information as you're looking at it to your sales operations people. Do these people still need to be making OTEs of 200,000, right? Should we be lowering OTEs commensurate with the market and commensurate with what we're making as a company? These are all questions that are valid, right? And the other side of it is, well, rather than lowering OTE, should I go ahead and reduce my head count, which is more than likely what most people did. Therefore, your OTE should be similar by your rep if you didn't reduce head count. If you did reduce head count, you're just going to expect them to do more based on the quota that needs to be hit for that particular region so that you can hit the revenue that you're looking for. Realistically, they should have more deals in their pipe too, just to cover that, because you've reduced people out, given them more territory, given them more revenue to hit, more deals to hit. So this is going to be part of that negotiation, right? But people should understand how you're setting quota and what the implications are, and let them know the formulas, right? So here's an example of the formulas that you need from a quota perspective, right? And I know I'm hitting on quota quite a bit. Let me talk to you a little bit about why am I focusing on quota. Again, it comes back to rate time service is really easy. It's not really going to change in a market fluctuation, and it's really for seasonal, non-sophisticated salespeople. So quota and kicker are something that you're going to have to look at. The one thing I would say is that for the next year or two, based on market fluctuations, you should reset or at least look at the possibility of resetting and recasting your quota on a quarterly basis. For a commissions manager, this is going to be painful, but your operations people should be asking you to do this, right? I need to know if I'm hitting or going to hit my quarterly quota threshold, or am I hitting my annual threshold? I need to track both of those. So from a commissions plan perspective, you want to have flexibility to do that. So should you change a working plan, or is your plan working? Well, if it worked before, should I really change it? If you're driving behavior, is it something that you should change? Not necessarily, right? Again, it comes down to, I don't know if I would change the plan, but I might change or add a piece to the metrics of what we're selling and how we're selling. So if your methods of selling are changed and changed drastically, you want to be able to monitor that, compensate off of it, and report it to management, right? So, and like I'm saying here, almost all salespeople have moved to a digital contact method to reach out to people. So you do need to be monitoring that. Whether you want to commission off of that is another decision, but it is something that you should consider as a metric of or a KPI inside of your system. And that's what I'm getting to here with the new change in metrics. So if you think about your system itself, data in informs decisions, data out, and you're going to use reports and communications, right? So I'm going to go into some of the reports that you should be looking at, but as it pertains to your system, the information you get in from the system needs to be whole. Just because people are going through a market downturn doesn't mean that they lose the responsibility of adequately collecting their information, their deals. And it has to be informed decisions out. What are finance going to be looking for? What is sales operations going to be looking for? Sales operations is going to be looking for how are they accessing their deals so they can get with marketing. Finance is going to be saying, hey, are we about to go out of business? Do we need to cut more heads? Are we starting to hit our numbers? Do we need to increase our head count? If you think about that, all the data is going to be important, and it'll require some of these types of outlier reports, like from a quota attainment, right? What's the variance based on the need to strike quarterly quota? So this is exactly what I was talking from a quarterly quota perspective. You want to build these reports. I want to understand, are my people hitting their quota on a quarterly basis? Because I may need to look at either ramping people off, ramping quota up or down. How do I want to maneuver to what I'm hitting from a quota perspective? From a commission outlier report, is there stuff that's performing better? And this is important, right? Because you want to be able to move your business so that your company can stay alive, and you can provide that information to finance. So you can say, hey, we're really dying here on the vine in some of our storefronts, but realistically, these products are selling incredibly well in our web presence. We should be moving towards that and moving towards a more holistic customer experience. Therefore, let's go ahead and let's start compensating based on that and how our salespeople react to customer experience. And then there's another one, utilizing metrics to drive behavior, right? So again, let's look at our digital connection and outreach. How are we going to capture and incent on this? Well, it's going to come from your CRM, right? So how are we marking that we have opportunities that are digital outreach based opportunities? How are we driving the behavior of that? So these are all things that could be outlier reports that will help you drive the sales planning, the sales organization. I know I gave you some math there from a quota perspective. If anybody wants that math, they can have it. I can send it over to them. And I would also recommend, if you want to look, or you're thinking about planning from a sales planning perspective, there's a lot of books out there. Like I said, David Chikelli's book is really well written. And what I would say is it doesn't obviously go into the market fluctuations that we just discussed right now. Market fluctuations will really be relevant towards things like draw and quota, which we just discussed. You'll have to look at how you relieve draw, how you relieve clawbacks for people. Those are all going to be important things. And then in turn over and onboarding and offboarding from that side. So these are all important things as you start planning for next year, because you're either going to be moving up or moving down. It's going to be one of those. So anyway, I appreciate everybody dialing in. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me at dougherb@landshore.com. Thank you very much.